Hello everyone, and welcome to Mochi Doki Mochi episode 11. First of all, I would like to wish you a happy new year. May your 2023 be filled with love, happiness, and all sorts of pleasantries, and of course with tons and tons of good anime and manga. And speaking of good manga, the past month I've been reading a lot of those. This has mainly been driven by a challenge that I set up for myself at the start of December. I'm trying to read on average one manga every single day in order to improve my Japanese skills. And to be honest, it hasn't been easy, but it has been a lot of fun and a very cool motivator to keep up with my studies. So yeah, the thing that's very hard is just that it takes up a lot of time. Like literally I could read 3 volumes of manga in English in the time that it takes me to read one single volume in Japanese. But I think it's worth it in the end because like maybe in a couple of months I'll be able to like really ramp things up and I can just with comfort read manga in Japanese. But yeah, we'll just have to see. In any case, because it has been taking up so much time, I haven't really watched a lot of anime. So in these coming couple of episodes, and also in the past actually, there's not going to be a lot of me talking about anime. But hopefully anywhere around like March or something, I'll be back with that again. Anyway, today I thought it would be nice to start off with this shonen horror mystery manga I read a couple of months back. It's called Hikaru ga Shinda Natsu. So this is the debut manga serialization of Moku Moku Ren, and it actually made the #1 spot of the Kono Manga ga Sugoi ranking list for 2023 in the males category. For those who may not know, Kono Manga ga Sugoi is a yearly ranking list in Japan published by the Kono Manga ga Sugoi editorial team, and it's based on a survey that they send out to people who either read manga or are kind of like in the manga industry and industries adjacent to that. For instance, they'll send it out to people who are in vocational school for manga, to voice actors, idols, students in school who read a lot of manga. And so yeah, this ranking list was actually created in order to kind of push forward up-and-coming mangaka and their works, or just really good work in general. But anyway, going back to Hikaru ga Shinda Natsu, I should note that this manga is actually getting an official release soon in English because Yen Press licensed the manga last year. So let me tell you a bit what this story is all about. It's set in this tiny village called Kubitachi, in which 2 schoolboys called Yoshiki and Hikaru live. As they were the only ones of similar age in the village, they grew up doing basically everything together, in the process becoming best friends and even developing feelings for one another, which neither had confessed to yet. But then one day, Hikaru goes missing on the mountain next to the village, and after a week he comes back. The only thing is that ever since he's returned, he hasn't been acting like the Hikaru Yoshiki knows. After half a year of really strange behavior, Yoshiki confronts Hikaru about it, which prompts the creature that took over Hikaru's body to beg him not to tell anyone, otherwise he'll have to kill Yoshiki, and he really doesn't want to because he's really been enjoying getting to live as a human for the first time. Sorry, I had to, sprinkle some salt on that for a second because it was so jarring reading that. So, yeah, as you can imagine, Yoshiki is incredibly shocked by this. Also, this is not really a spoiler because this all happens actually in the first chapter of the manga. So, as the story continues, we follow Yoshiki as he struggles with the loss of Hikaru whilst also staying close to the thing that has inhabited his remains. At the same time, very strange things are occurring in their village. There are multiple sightings of really strange and weird creatures, and a gruesome murder has also taken place. And this all is starting to make the villagers feel a bit uneasy, especially those who are more perceptive to the supernatural. And so that is as much as I know about this manga so far. There are just 2 volumes out and the pacing is quite slow, so not all that much has happened. At this point, we're still getting to know more about the characters and the mystery in which the village and the mountain is shrouded in. But yeah, so far I've really been enjoying this manga and I actually quite like the slow pace. Moku Moku Ren makes sure to spend a lot of time with the main characters, primarily focusing on their feelings. And this made it very easy for me to empathize with Yoshiki, seeing the circumstances he finds himself in. He's heartbroken, grieving, dealing with familial issues, and living in a small village where everyone knows just a bit too much about you is, a lot to deal with. And then there's the creature who took over Hikaru's body, and that's a whole other bag of feelings and experiences. And I found myself being very conflicted about him. Like, clearly this entity is wildly dangerous, but at the same time, there seems to not be enough awareness on its own side to actually realize this. It's, I don't really know how to explain it other than imagine like a baby, but it can shoot lasers out of its eyes or something like that. Like, it's wildly dangerous, but it still has that like unawareness. And I think what also makes it very easy for me to, kind of like empathize with it is because of its human form. It looks exactly like Hikaru, and we also get, flashbacks from when Hikaru was still alive. And so it kind of like gets hard to differentiate between the 2 characters, because on the one hand, you have Hikaru, who Yoshiki cares so much about, who is essentially dead. And then you have the monster who, if you don't think too much about it, kind of feels like Hikaru as well. So it's a very weird position to be in, and I really like how Moku Moku Ren portrays it, because it makes it easier to understand where Yoshiki is coming from. Because if it would be like an ugly weird ass monster, or at least like if it would be in its like natural state, the way it looks with like weird, it has like weird black, this weird psychedelic form shape to it. If it would have been like that all the time, it would be harder to empathize. But yeah, I think the thing that I liked the most, besides, the focus on the main characters, their feelings and emotions, was just the horror of the manga. It definitely doesn't contain the type of horror, that really comes at you with jump scares and extremely horrifying imagery. Rather, it features a type of horror that slowly creeps up on you. The relaxing scenery of a sleepy village in the countryside during the summer gets juxtaposed with the ominous presence that, although constant, is now for the most part still obfuscated. And that creates a type of suspense that I just find to be so utterly thrilling. In fact, it reminded me a lot about what I initially liked about the Higurashi series. And aside from all this, the art is absolutely stellar. Moku Moku Ren really puts a lot of effort in the facial expressions and angles for most of the panels, creating shots that for me have been extremely memorable. Now, as I said earlier, this manga was ranked first in the Kono Manga ga Sugoi 2023 ranking list for the male readership. And I was actually surprised to see that it ranked this high with this particular demographic, as the main characters are schoolboys who have feelings for one another. Because, that is something that you'd see become popular amongst female readers, more likely at least. So I think that that's also pretty cool, that it kind of like, maybe breaks the stereotype for shonen manga. I'm not too sure if it's a shonen manga, but I did remember looking at the tags on Bookwalker, again, not sponsored, and it said shonen manga. But yeah, it also turns out that Moku Moku Ren themselves didn't expect them to rank this high amongst male readers, as they themselves had the impression that it were mostly girls and women who were reading the manga. I read this in the magazine of the rankings, which contains a very lengthy interview with Moku Moku Ren, where they talk about the manga itself and how it was created. Apparently, before the pandemic started, they had enjoyed drawing and storytelling, but hadn't created a manga before. But then the pandemic hit, and I believe they had just graduated high school. And so all of a sudden they had all this free time, which they decided to use to create a manga using an idea they were toying around with for quite a while. They posted it on Twitter and it blew up. And then it got onto TikTok and it blew up even more. And at that point, they just got flooded with requests of editors to have their work serialized. And so that's basically how this manga was created. I think it's pretty cool also to see how the manga industry is changing due to social media and how it as a result has become a lot more accessible for people to, give it a try and become successful, essentially. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly is the title, Hikaru ga Shinda Natsu. So I guess you can interpret it in two ways. The most forward title being the summer in which Hikaru died, but Hikaru also means light. So I also like the interpretation of, the summer in which the light died, at least for Yoshiki, Hikaru being his light and love interest and all that. Now, one thing a couple of people have noticed is that Hikaru actually didn't die during the summer. He died 6 months before. But Moku Moku Ren said that one should interpret the title as it being the summer during which Yoshiki, after confronting, the Hikaru LARPer, he finally accepts that Hikaru is truly dead. So, as for a more light-hearted manga, I read the first volume of Futari Ashita mo Sorenari ni by Suzuyuki. It's a seinen slice-of-life manga about 28-year-old Aihara Ryo, who starts living with her 25-year-old boyfriend of 15 months, Aida Yuya, after he asks her to move in with him. I really like this manga, but when I was trying to think about, what to say about it, I didn't come up with all that much, which is usually a sign of me, not completely being invested in the story. And I think that that's basically because it's, I guess, like a very just simply a straightforward, funny, and easygoing manga. The chapters are short and sweet, focusing on very innocuous things in daily life, like going out to get a late night snack, taking care of the other when they have a cold or something like that. Yeah, just not that much happens, I think. But it's a very relaxing manga if you want to read something to just, take your mind off of things. Maybe to add to this, I can say that I really like Ryo and Yuya's personalities. I think they're very fun and they match each other very well. Yuya comes across as like the more mellow person, or rather he just looks a lot like a tired Levi from Attack on Titan. And yeah, his, I guess, kind of like main shtick is that he really, really likes Ryo. Like, he's head over heels for her, but, not in a very obnoxious way. He's just always trying to find ways to make her life just a bit better. Maybe a good example is, for instance, at one point they're watching TV and Yuya's drinking some beer and someone gets like a bouquet of flowers and he's like, bouquet of flowers, like why would anyone like that? Like, wouldn't you rather have a bouquet of food? And Rio's like, well, I like flowers, it's a nice gift. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna head over to bed. And so he runs out of the room and then he tries calling his brother, who is a florist. And he's like, yeah, can I, I want to get Rio some flowers, like what should I do, blah, 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 blah. And then turns out, because he was tired and drunk, he called Rio instead and was telling her or like his plans to buy flowers. That's kind of like the humor in this manga. And then of course you have Rio as well, and she's a bit more feisty. Also, I think what really grabbed my attention was the first chapter. So she goes to work and she left like milk pudding in the fridge, and she was really looking forward to that because, you know, work is like work, and getting home and having a nice snack is awesome. So she comes home and it's gone, and and she's like, "Did you eat this, Yuya?" And he's like, I didn't eat it, like, and she's like, "Well, there's not anyone else around here." And so it's like, you know, anything can happen in this world. And so she just gets so freaking pissed also that he's not admitting to having like taken her pudding, that she's like, "You freaking bastard," and she's like, I don't know, doing the dishes, and she's like really freaking happy, no, she's really freaking angry. And yeah, she comes up with an entire scheme to, I guess, kind of like get him back. But yeah, so that's kind of like, again, another example of the humor. Something else about them, their personalities, they both really like to overthink things. So they're just like blowing things out of proportions in their mind, and then in reality it's like not that deep. And so that's also something that occurs often. That's like a source of humor. So yeah, would I recommend this manga? Yeah, I still would. There's nothing wrong about it, but because I've been reading like really awesome manga the past couple of weeks, it kind of like pales in comparison, if that makes any sense. So there are 4 more volumes in this series. It has been completed, and yeah, at this moment in time I don't think I will be continuing with this, but who knows, maybe I'll pick it up again sometime in the future. We'll see. So yeah, I guess in the end I still had a couple of things to say about this manga. Hey, Editing Seiji here. This next manga features domestic abuse, so if you'd rather not hear about this, you can skip to exactly 26 minutes. So back in episode 6, I talked about reading a one-shot by this mangaka called Okahata Mako. It was called Enishi mo Takenawa. To give you a little refresher, the manga was about a man named Teta and a woman called Chisato who had been friends since childhood. The story takes place at the wedding of Chisato, which Teta, as a close friend, also attends. During the wedding, however, he gets asked by one of his acquaintances why he and Chisato never ended up together. And so by means of Teta's memories, the manga shows what their relationship was like throughout their formative years. And in that way, you kind of get the impression as to how they never ended up together. Personally, I thought that Teta just didn't make his move when there were moments for them to, I guess, become closer than friends. But yeah, the manga definitely didn't, give like a definitive answer. So I ended up really enjoying a lot of things about this one shot, and then it turned out that it actually wasn't a one shot. I got a notification a couple of months back saying that a second chapter was uploaded, so I guess Okahata decided to continue with this story, or that had always been the intention. But regardless of the reason, I was just really excited that there was more for me to read. So then a couple of weeks back I read the second chapter, and this one is actually written from the perspective of Chisato. It covers most of her childhood up until high school. So as a kid, Chisato played the piano, and she was very talented at that. However, she struggled a lot due to the exorbitant amount of pressure she experienced from trying to desperately live up to the expectations of her parents. Basically, her parents were total ass, with her father being the main driver behind the mental and physical abuse Chisato experiences, because he really didn't want her to quote unquote let him down. And then there was her mother, who was basically a huge enabler. So Chisato experienced this from, ever since she was little. And at some point in middle school, she actually comes to the conclusion that it's not the piano or her pride that she's desperately clinging on to, but rather the interest and expectations of the people close to her, i.e. her parents. Because she's so afraid that they'll abandon her eventually, leaving her all alone. And to be alone for her meant death, essentially. And so the manga shows you how Chisato has essentially been living her entire life in accordance to the interests of her parents rather than her own. And she, at some point doesn't even know what interest she may or may not have. And this is actually the complete opposite of Teta. And so in that way, Teta has always represented someone Chisato wanted to be like. And throughout the manga, you see how she struggles with that grip of her parents. And we see also Teta trying to reach out to her. And this doesn't come without any challenges, because Chisato doesn't believe that Teta could even begin to understand her situation because he's so different. And so she constantly refuses to open up to him. Now, there is this one specific moment that we get to see in the manga during their time in high school. And I just have to say beforehand that I just love the way in which Okahata set this entire scene up. So basically, the 2 chapters in the manga covered the childhood memories of each main character, a childhood they had mostly spent together. However, there is no overlap in the memories between the 2 chapters, except for one single moment, which, as it reveals itself, seems to have been a really monumental moment in their relationship. In the first chapter, we experience this from the perspective of Teta, him being at home and receiving a phone call from Chisato that has him worried, and him running to go to her. So you don't really know what exactly has been happening on Chisato's side. And this is where chapter 2 comes in. This basically fills in all the blanks. You see, at this time, they were in high school, and Chisato's father wanted her to go to a national university, which are the universities in Japan that are held in the highest regard. However, Chisato, having found an interest in beauty and, really trying to do something for herself for once, picked up some, how would you say that? Like folders for beauty schools. And she takes them home, and eventually her father finds them. And this greatly upsets him to the point that he beats her, and Chisato runs away. She ends up somewhere on the grass next to a bridge, and as she's laying there, she thinks about Teta and how she just really wants to be like him when she, by mistake, calls him. He picks up and she tries to play it off as if nothing's wrong, but he hears that something clearly is wrong. So he asks her for her location, and he, as we know already, ends up racing towards the bridge to meet her. And so this is the explanation behind the weird phone call Teta got in the first chapter. And so now he's there, standing in front of Chisato, who is in tears, when the manga cuts to a flashback of how his kindness has impacted her life. And as I was reading this, I was like, yeah, this is the moment for Teta to, hold her and be with her and love her forever. And you go, guys. I was like, oh, I would really love for them to be together. But I already read the first chapter, which showed how he actually tried to do that, but eventually didn't take that chance. And so at this point, the scene is followed by several quick time jumps where it's shown how Chisato ended up following her dreams, becoming a beautician, and finding the man she eventually marries in the first chapter. And then this chapter ends with Chisato texting Teta to meet up with her so that she can tell him, most likely, that she's got engaged. So yeah, this was only another 50 pages, but I went through so many emotions, from sadness over Chisato's life experiences to I don't know what I was feeling when they were at the bridge. Like, just a mixed bag of emotions of, rooting for them so badly, wanting them to have their happiness together, but instead getting to see how they didn't even get to the point of trying. Like, they were so close to trying. It's so painful. And yeah, at the same time, I'm super happy for how far Chisato eventually has come. Like, my eyes were really sweating towards the end, but also, like, gosh, like, I just feel like there's just so much left unspoken, especially from Teta's side. And, like I said before, the first chapter doesn't really deeply go into that part of his feelings. Like, we already know that he's just happy already to see Chisato happy, but there still feels like there's something there, like he's experiencing some type of regret or grief for what could have been. But I don't know. All I know is that I hope it gets explored in a future chapter, if there will ever even be a future chapter. But I am already thankful that I got to read more of this manga. So there has been a shoujo manga that I've been wanting to read simply because of the cover of its first volume, and that is Kimi no Yokogao or Miteita by Ichinoe Rumi. So the title translates to I was looking at your side profile. The story centers around Hikaru, a 15-year-old student in her first year of high school. As an after-school activity, she also plays the French horn in the school's orchestra. So Hikaru describes herself as an extremely ordinary high schooler. She doesn't particularly excel physically, her grades are average, and she doesn't have any extraordinary hobbies. In other words, she's ironically not someone who gives off main character vibes. Hikaru also doesn't think of herself in that way, but she does feel that her best friend Marie would be cut out for such a role. Marie's pretty and cute, but she's also extremely shy, and so Hikaru in her head starts to imagine her as the main character of a shoujo romance manga. The only thing that is left to find is the perfect guy to be her love interest, and when Hikaru finds out that their classmate Otani actually has a crush on Mari, she starts shipping them together. And so Hikaru tries to create situations for Otani and Mari to become close, but in that process she finds that she herself actually has a crush on Otani. At the same time also, she hasn't had that much luck with trying to get the pair together, because for one, Mari, like I said, is very shy and she rarely speaks to anyone at school besides Hikaru. But most importantly, Mari has a crush on their language teacher, who also happens to lead the school band Hikaru is a part of. Also, I should note that Hikaru at this point in time isn't aware of this crush. And so this is how we end up with a series of unrequited love, which certainly seems like it will all end in heartbreak. So far, only the first volume is out, and at the moment, I'm not completely sold on the manga, but I strongly believe that it has a lot of potential and that it's going to be a good one. I really like the idea of the story, having the main character be the girl who is actually, or at the least initially, kind of at the sidelines, kind of documenting her best friend's love life. However, because Hikari is described as so painfully average in this volume, and because she as a character is constantly diverting the focus from her onto Mari, it's a bit hard to, I guess, kind of connect to her. And the same goes for Mari, but she suffers from the opposite. Despite her being, the quote-unquote main character, you don't get to experience the story from her perspective, which makes her come across, at least for now, as a very one-dimensional character. Also, the moments when she appears in the manga, it's often when she gets scared by people approaching her or talking to her. And in those moments, she's kind of drawn in a very cartoony, slapstick type of way. So that also doesn't really help. But despite this being the case at this moment, I really do think that this manga has a lot of potential. This is just the first volume, and so I'm very confident that there will be much more character development to come. Right now, the manga is clearly still in the stage of setting up the story. We've had our first introduction to the main characters, and the first 3 crushes have started to unfold. Now, if you look at the synopsis, it says that the story is about 4 high school kids experiencing unrequited love. So the manga has yet to cover the crush of the last kid who is going to obviously get their heart stomped on. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to be Otani's friend. But yeah, this makes me really look forward to the rest of the story. I really enjoy seeing characters get fleshed out. And one thing in particular that I'm really hoping to see is Hikaru coming to the realization that she can want more in life and that she doesn't have to necessarily be content with acting as the side character to someone else's story. Also, I just can't wait for the heartbreak. Like, I find it so cathartic to just really get into a story and kind of feel like you're living alongside the characters, experiencing the emotions they're going through with them. Like, heartbreak in high school is very relatable and it sucks ass, but it's really nice to be able to once in a while just let your emotions run free without actually having to deal with something in real life that is causing all these feelings. I remember 2 years back, I read all 8 volumes of Blue Flag in one night by myself, and I was just bawling throughout the whole story. It really was one of the best experiences I've ever had reading manga, really. You know, I should actually take some time and reread the manga for the podcast because it's just really good. When I finished reading the series, I had wanted to make this really in-depth video on it with cool animation effects using like Adobe After Effects, and so I wanted to learn all of that. But yeah, it's been almost 2 years now and I haven't really managed to find the time to do so. So maybe this year I might start trying to do that stuff, but we'll have to see about that. In any case, I would highly recommend Blue Flag. If the premise of high school kids dealing with unrequited love is something that really intrigues you, you have got to check this out. The story and the characters just had such a tight grip on me. It's simply an amazing story. But yeah, I'm going a bit off topic, but basically I feel that Kimi no Yokogao or Miteita looks to be really promising and I'm excited to see where it will go in the future. Before I move on to the next manga, I of course have to mention the absolute stellar art in this manga. Ichinohe really pulls you in by opting for white and light grays in the background or just leaving the background completely white. This also helps give a very uplifting atmosphere for something that I think is going to be quite sad in the end. I especially love Hikaru's character design with that gorgeous dark bob. In particular, Ichino's choice in the manga to depict her hair as pitch black and using white for highlighting. It just looks so clean and stunning, and also by choosing lighter hair for the other students Hikaru hangs out with, it really makes her stand out. But yeah, what else did I want to say? Yeah, so I was able to read this manga for free because the manga that it's currently being serialized in, Besatsu Friend, put up some of their work for free on Bookwalker. Again, not sponsored. I found that a lot of magazines actually do that as a way to, I guess, get you to pick up a copy. And so they'll just say something like, okay, this manga volume is available for like 2 weeks and then it like goes away. But yeah, as I found more magazines doing this, I thought it would be a fun idea to do more deep dives into magazines to get a good impression of them and show what each magazine has to offer. The past couple of of weeks, I've actually been doing that for this manga magazine called Hata, because I got an amazing deal. Like, I was able to buy like 2 years worth of their magazines, so like 20 magazines for 100 yen each, which is like 80 cents. So I don't want to do the mathematics behind that right now, but it was a steal. So I was like, I just have to do it. I just have to talk about this magazine. And yeah, Hata. So what is it? It's actually a very unique seinen manga known for series such as Delicious in Dungeon, A Bride's Story, and haven't you heard, I'm Sakamoto? Actually, I really, really love that last manga series. I also watched the anime, absolutely hilarious. But yeah, I have spent quite some time on this magazine the past couple of weeks, and I've just been blown away by how much awesome manga is being published in that magazine. So at the moment, I'm working on a video kind of like talking about how it was founded, how the editorial team operates, and collaborations and stuff, like just basically the magazine, just talking about it. And I am almost done. I just need to read about 4 or 5 like samplers, so anywhere between 80 to, I don't know, like an entire volume, 180, 200 pages of about 4 more manga, because I really wanted to feature the new manga that came out from that magazine last year, which I think there were about 14 in total, 4 new serializations in the magazine. So I really just wanted to showcase what it has to offer now. And then in the future, I'd like to talk more about the manga, and I'll be talking about them here as well, because I have already found about, I think, 7 series that I want to continue. So you'll definitely will be hearing me talk more in depth about these manga in the future. Actually, next week, episode 11, I'll be talking about 1 or 2 of these manga. Yeah. So I also ended up reading another shoujo romance manga, and this one is called Sakura wa Watashi o Sukisugiru by Yukimiya Fuyu. This also has an English release with the title of Sakura's Dedication. So the story is about a girl called Hanasaki Kiwa who just recently broke up with her boyfriend Nakazaki because he cheated on her. As she's discussing their breakup with one of her friends in class, one of their classmates called Sakura walks up to her asking about whether or not this rumor of her having broken up with her boyfriend is true. When Kiwa confirms it's true, he instantly asks her out. You gotta love the sensibilities of a 16-year-old schoolboy. But of course, she says no, she turns him down. She basically says like, yeah, sorry, you're really not my type. But instantly, he retorts by saying that, did you know, actually, they say that the person who is your type and the person you actually like are completely different. And so instead of taking this fat ass L as a champ and leave, he tells her he won't give up on her, and so he'll just keep on confessing. And this instantly gave me really bad vibes. I was like, oh boy, we gotta push her on our hands. But actually, it wasn't all that bad. Like, he doesn't end up harassing her and turning her life into living hell for not wanting to date him. Rather quickly, actually, there's a day when Kiwa passes out during gym class and Sakura carries her to the school's infirmary. He stays by her side, which is when she asks why he even likes her, and he tells her about this time that he ran into someone and spilled all his papers on the floor, and she helped pick them up and made a really good impression on him. And so now, despite Sakura not being her type because he's kind of nerdy and he's known as a serious guy in their class, she slowly but surely starts liking him. After the fainting incident, she bakes him cookies, they start studying together, and this is when Kiwa's feelings really start to develop. they end up dating each other, and so the manga follows them trying to make things work as a couple. So, as you can imagine, I had my reservations at the start of the manga, but I felt that eventually it was kind of cute, kind of a cute romance. The thing about their relationship is that Kiva is having a bit of a hard time dealing with how much Sakura likes her. She gets really embarrassed when he tells her how cute he finds her, or basically whenever he says anything that expresses his affection for her. And so basically one of the reasons as to why she's having such a hard time accepting his compliments is because her former boyfriends were utter trash and never did anything of that nature. And so I think for me, seeing Kiva on that journey of being loved unconditionally by Sakura and trying to accept that as something real is what I like about the manga the most. Most of the comedy in the manga comes from Sakura being a total nerd. Basically, he spends his time reading relationship advice books in order to make things work as smoothly as possible between him and Kiva, which, made me chuckle a couple of times. For instance, at the start of the manga, before they actually start to date, it seems that a rumor has been spread by Kiwa's ex-boyfriend, and so people start to act kind of weird towards Kiwa. Then, when she tries to speak to Sakura, he's very curt and he walks away for an errand. And so when she tries to talk to him again about this rumor, he's like, "Oh no, I hadn't heard of that. This book I read just said that if pushing doesn't work, you should pull." And so basically, he was just trying to play hard to get, and that unfortunately just happened to coincide with the rumor being spread. So in conclusion, it does seem like a very decent manga, but I'm not too sure if I want to continue with it. There are just so much more shoujo manga I want to try out these coming weeks. Both Desert and Margaret have put out a lot of free manga available up until the 9th of January, so I want to try and read as many as I can before, the time of their availability runs out. Also, there was a sale on Bookwalker, and I got my hands on volume 2, 3, and 4 of Anoko no Kodomo. The English title is My Girlfriend's Child by Aoi Mamoru. It's that shoujo manga I discussed last week in episode 10. So that is definitely a manga that I'm going to try and prioritize when it comes to reading. And so hopefully I can cover my opinions in the least spoilery way for those volumes in the future. So lastly, I want to talk about some shoujo manga I really want to get my hands on, though I'm feeling a bit conflicted about whether or not I should get them. So some of you might know I have been really into vintage, or I guess a lot of people call it classic shoujo manga. It's been an interest of mine for a couple of years now, and I've collected quite a lot of them, including books about the mangaka who have created them. The thing is that in the past year or two, I've switched to reading manga digitally because it's just so much easier when I come across a kanji that I don't recognize and need to look up in order to understand what's being said. And the second reason is because I live in a tiny, tiny apartment and I only have one bookcase at my disposal, which is working its hardest to keep all of my books in order. So yeah, there are two mangaka that I found actually that I've known about for quite a bit now, and I've come to the point where I'm like, I just really want to read their work. The only thing is that they haven't had all of their work digitized yet. For one mangaka, it's a process that is currently ongoing, and for the other, I don't know, there's literally nothing. And so I feel very conflicted about whether or not I should get these specific manga. I guess I just quickly want to mention one of these mangaka because I'm kind of running out of time right now with this podcast. So one of the mangaka is Matsuzaki Akemi. She's known for her extensive work in the shoujo horror genre. She has about 50 plus different titles out, and she's the one whose work is now slowly getting digitized. I think this month actually maybe like 15 of her pieces got published, and I'll definitely be picking some of those up. But the one that I'm actually gunning for is called Shiroi Tsinkonka. The title translates to White Requiem. And so I found it actually in this like information book for Bishonen, so Bishonen manga, so pretty boys manga. And I saw this spread right here. Don't know if you can see it. This is absolutely stunning. And I was like, I want to know what this manga is about. So I looked it up like a year or two ago, and I couldn't find all that much information, like any information at all, even in Japanese. But last week I saw there was one secondhand copy available, because like it's a manga from like the 70s or 80s, so it's out of print now. But yeah, I saw that it was available, and I also saw that there was this tiny synopsis on this website, this Japanese website. So apparently the story centers around a middle school teacher called Siegfried, who arrives in a town where there are black and white people. I don't know if this is skin color or hair. The synopsis was like 1 or 2 sentences. But yeah, the two groups are at odds with one another, and supposedly this manga is about the demons that lurk in everyone's heart. It would be awesome if it would be like a macabre story, but I'm pretty sure it is actually, because Matsuzaki is known for like horror, so I'm pretty sure it's gonna be something dark. But yeah, we have finally arrived at the last segment of the podcast, Mochi Doki Mochi. Questions. So if you have a question or a request, like, I don't know, a recommendation, you would like some advice, you can leave a comment in the comment section below with the hashtag MDMQ, and I will try and answer it in any of the future episodes. So for today's episode, we have a question from Bean Queenie, and it says, if you could have one Japanese only ATM at the moment, manga licensed in English, what would it be? Thank you very much for that question. And instantly, I like the answer just popped up. It's gonna have to be Jinburaido. I forget the name of the mangaka, but I'll leave like the information in the description box below. But this manga actually ranked second in the Kono Manga ga Sugoi 2023 ranking list for the female readership. So before I started working on the Harta video, I was actually looking at making like a video about the top 10 for the female readership, and hopefully also the male readership this month or maybe next month. But yeah, since it was on the list, I started reading it, and initially I thought it was just going to be an interesting manga about a woman dealing with the struggles of being a woman in this society, in particular a very attractive woman, and you know, having to deal with a lot of unwanted attention. And then I read the first volume and I was like, what? What was this? Is this manga on crack? Like, I was so shocked to learn, like, I don't know, I guess like what this manga really is about. And I won't spoil this because I'm actually working on a video, and yeah, it's a lot was going on, and I just thought that this was just such an amazing story. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to receive an English release either this year or next year. There's no doubt, because I was just reading the reviews, the Japanese reviews, and they're like, everyone had kind of like a similar reaction to me. And yeah, also quite a lot of men have read this one as well, which is really interesting, especially, well, not only because it's a josei, but because of the strong feminist themes that it has as well. But yeah, it's just a really interesting story. I'm still going to reread it because how would I say this? The language is a bit harder for me to read. So I want to make sure that I like fully understand everything before I like put out a video about it. So yeah, thank you so much for your question. And I think that's about everything for today's podcast. Yes, so thank you so much for watching and or listening, as always. A special thank you to all the people who have supported me on Patreon and Ko-fi with that, or Coffee, I don't know how you pronounce it, but because of all of you, I'm still able to do all of this. So thank you so, so much. And yeah, again, thanks for watching and listening, and I hope to see you soon in the next episode. Cheers!